Corbin, you feel loved, right?
I know I'm pretty well taken care of as far as that department of being loved.
Yeah.
I have never had a moment, a second of my life where I've questioned the whole idea of whether I'm loved.
Yeah.
I know I'm pretty well damn covered in that category.
You're blessed.
Yeah, so,
Yeah. Who do you think loves you?
You and Dad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that Pat, I'm pretty well covered.
Yeah.
As far as the Department of Love,
all right.
I know that I'm a well-justified soul and a soldier in Christ.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm talking about.
Again, you said you know what you're talking about, but
I
you
don't know how to articulate my thoughts.
Well, you're doing a great job.
Of my life with Christ.
Yeah.
And what I know that He is due from me.
Yeah.
I don't think I can repay Him like step by step right now.
Well, He knows how you feel.
I can try.
He knows your heart, right?
It's Up to You is always about empowerment. My guest today is known for so many accomplishments. Author, humanitarian, singer, daughter of the famous Pat Boone, businesswoman, and tireless advocate for people with traumatic brain injuries. Her devotion as a mother is what brought her to the national limelight in a way no parent ever hopes for. Welcome, Lindy Boone, Michaelis.
Hello. Hi, Minda.
Hi, I'm so excited to have you here.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad I get to come in and share with you.
Well, I heard that your life is sort of divided into two parts, the before and after.
That's true.
So tell us a little bit about the before and then what changed.
Well, I think I get asked to be on programs mostly because of who I'm related to. I'm related to Pat Boone. He's my dad, and so he's been kind of an iconic entertainer for over 60 years. And I had this unbelievable upbringing in Beverly Hills with just a charmed life, a really close-knit family, and living in the entertainment business was fun, and then got married and had my own family and had a wonderful life going up until I hit 55, and then I suppose God decided this is time to grow Lindy up a little bit. I had a major event happen.
But you're a singer also.
Well, that's true. I sang with my family. I missed telling you that. We got to sing together. I'm one of 4 girls, and so very close in age. We're just stair steps, and my mother taught us how to harmonize. So we did that for fun until one time my dad was going to go to Japan, and he decided, let's put the girls in the show and then we can all go together. The Osmond brothers were performing as the opening act, and then his girls came on for a couple of songs, and then the big finale with all the families. And it went really, really well. So then he said, well, let's try it in America and see how the American audiences liked it. And so our first show was in Las Vegas. The Pat Boone family, 2 shows a night for a month. And that went very well, too. So that led us into about 7 years of constant performing, recording, and it was, again, in my mind, it was just a charmed life. We got to go to regular school, but also hit the road maybe 1 week out of the month and all summer long, and it was quite an education in and of itself, and a lot of fun.
And you're still singing, right?
Well, yeah, after that I had my own family, but then I was approached by a singing group of 4 women again, and one of them was leaving the group. It's called the New Cordettes, and so they approached me would I like to join the group, and I learned some of the songs. My voice fit right into the alto part and my body fit right into the dress, and so I was in that group. I've been in that group for quite a long time, and it was perfect because it was harmonies again. I sang tight harmonies with my sisters. We did things comparable to the Carpenters, really tight harmonies. And this group does sisters back in the 40s, 50s, 60s. We did Shirelles, we did Andrew's sisters, any sisters thing, any tight harmony. So it was my cup of tea for sure, and we're still performing the New Cordettes.
Yeah, wow. So there's joy in your life, but something happened that really changed your perspective on things.
True. June 19th, 2001, I was on vacation with my husband and my youngest son, And I got a phone call that woke me up in the middle of the morning. It was 5 a.m. and it was dark and I kind of was disoriented. I heard a phone ringing in the distance and I had to bounce off the walls to figure out where it was coming from. And I heard my sister's voice and she told me that Ryan had an accident.
Ryan, your son.
My oldest son, thank you for helping me fill in the blanks. Yes, my oldest son, who at the time was 24, he had driven us to the airport, said goodbye. And then while we were gone, he had an accident where he and his roommate had gone up to the roof of his apartment building. It was 3 stories. And they were just going to get some sun in the afternoon. And he stepped across a skylight that was just flush with the ceiling. And he stepped on it instead of over it. And it did not bear his weight. And he just disappeared through the skylight with his roommate watching. And I'm very grateful that he wasn't alone because his roommate called 911. But he had fallen 3 stories down to concrete.
Oh, wow.
And his lungs had collapsed. He had a skull fracture. His spleen had burst. And he'd cracked a couple ribs. He'd hit the walls of the floors as he was going down. There were little railings. And he'd hit and then go down to the next and then finally to the floor. So paramedics came immediately. They took him to UCLA Medical Center. And it wasn't expected that he would survive. And through a series of heroics and prayer and the Lord showing up, and Ryan was meant to go on. And I was on the other side of the world when I heard about it. So that was what was horrible, is he was hanging by a thread and we had to pack up and get home. And it took 24 hours. And I would call home from Madrid and then I'd call home from Miami. And each time I got a better picture of how fragile the situation was and would he even be alive when I got back to the hospital. And he was in just a swollen state with every kind of tube hooked up to him. And so it was a shock. You just hear about tragedies and catastrophes to other people and you never think that you're going to have a loved one in that kind of condition. So it has changed my life. My life is divided between before the accident and since the accident. And I'm not the same person. Our family is very changed because things like that will break you or make you stronger.
And how has it changed you?
Well, it certainly has wizened me up and made me a stronger person. Mm-hmm. My faith is deeper. It's more my own. Because it does kind of strip you of everything you thought you knew, and you start asking the basic questions. Do I believe in God? Do I really believe in God? Mm-hmm. When you're on the precipice between, life and death, and I was on that precipice with my son.
Right.
I just felt like I was on the edge of eternity looking over and just wondering, is this something that I really believe?
A test of faith.
Yes, it really is. And so when I settled that, then you start asking, well, and in my book, I wrote a book just so I wrote a journal so I would remember the things that went through my mind. And I prayed and I asked God, who I did believe in, don't let this pain be for no reason. Mm-hmm. I'm listening. What am I supposed to learn from this? It was excruciating, but I really tuned in and I felt God all over the situation. Mm-hmm. So it actually solidified my faith and made me a much more empathetic person, compassionate person.
I see.
Because when you've had a charmed life, you don't even notice other people going through hard times. You might notice them, but you don't know what to say, you don't know how to react. But I realized sitting in that waiting room every day wondering what was going to happen. Was my son ever going to wake up? Was he ever going to have a recovery? Was he going to die? Those waiting rooms are full. They were full, not just of my family, but of other families. And I realized they're full every single day. Mm-hmm. And when we left, other families filled in those waiting rooms. So it kind of just grew me up to realize what suffering is and why we need to have a bigger picture than just our own world.
So you didn't focus on yourself and wallow. you brought your faith into what you were experiencing, and because of that, it made you reach out and do more than just focus extraordinarily on this critical situation you were involved in.
And it wasn't immediate. I think we did kind of self-focus for a while, but it was a realization and an eye-opening experience that I think I was learning as I went. And one of the things was that people came to me and shared with me their experiences. We had one family that drove all the way from San Diego to come to UCLA to just sing worship songs in the waiting room and to tell us about their son who had fallen off a cliff and had part of his brain removed, and brought him to show us his progress, that he was walking and talking. And it was both comforting and frightening, because he was had Coke bottle glasses, couldn't see as well as he did. He acted a little juvenile. But it was so lovely of this family to come and share and say, we're praying for you, we're with you in it, we know exactly what you're going through, we're 10 months in ourselves. And so I appreciated their faith, and I stayed in touch with them. And this young man went on to recover and get a job and get married and surf, and that was such a gift to me to have the hope that they brought. And so eventually, as we found our footing and we found our new normal, and Ryan did start to recover to the degree that we could take a breath, which was like a year and a half into it.
Of course.
It's a long, trying ordeal. We felt like we needed to reach out and wanted to. Felt God had given us a platform. People were listening to our story through the media because my dad was famous. And Larry King had us on his program 5 different times over that year and a half and watched us in our pain. And the first time we were on, it was within a month of Ryan's accident, so I was raw. And he would check in with us and have us back on, and he even drove out. Larry King drove out an hour and a half to come and meet Ryan at a subacute facility where Ryan was still not talking, but kind of coming out of his coma. So the world, Larry King was seen in 220 countries, and the world was kind of watching how our family was coping with tragedy. And we were able to share our confidence that all things work together for good. And because we love the Lord, we stood on that. And we believed that something good is bound to happen, and that Ryan is able to come a lot farther than was ever predicted. And he still is, and it's been almost 17 years. He's still making progress.
Amazing.
So just to update you, he did come out of his coma. He has begun talking. He talks all the time. And now, if anything, we're saying, Ryan. His voice, it took 15 months before I heard his voice. And it's strong and back to its normal volume now. And he didn't eat. He had a feeding tube until almost 2 years. Finally got that out. And every part of his body is moving. He's not walking on his own yet, but he continues to make progress in that. He has a sense of humor, and we have so much joy, and I'm so grateful every day I wake up, and every time I go in and I hear, I love you, Mom, that's the first thing I hear when he sees me. Hi, Mom, I love you, Mom. I get hugs every day, and I'm blessed. I'm just blessed.
And you've taken that blessing and converted it into a way of helping others as well.
Yes, it's part of the healing process. I really recommend people who have suffered and lost, they can ask God, how can you take my broken pieces and put me back together again and make something beautiful? And so we just felt compelled to start an organization called Ryan's Reach. And Ryan's Reach was committed to helping families like ours that didn't have a celebrity in the family, that didn't go on Larry King, but needed the goodwill and the prayer of other people. And we had the time to be able to focus on raising funds because we were blessed with a settlement. We don't raise money for Ryan at all. He's well taken care of. So what we do is my husband and I and Ryan's dad, we've really worked along with our board to raise funds so that we can make possible therapy for other families who have run out of insurance and run out of money, and their loved ones could still also continue to get better. They tell you that usually within a year and a half or 2 years, progress will probably slow down or stop. That wasn't true of Ryan, and I've seen that not be true of so many others. I think that in 2 years, people have run out of money, and insurance is cut off,
Yes.
and energy is expended, so that the caregivers, the family members, can barely just take care of them, to feed them, bathe them, clothe them, and just take care of them. And the
Right.
therapy just doesn't continue. But if therapy continues, progress usually does continue. So we've made possible to give a lot of survivors of brain injury therapy through High Hopes Head Injury Program in Tustin. And then more recently, we became our own 501c3 so that we could start a group home for people with brain injury that are too young to be placed in a nursing home with the elderly. So up to now, that's the only place, for the most part in the country, but at least in our area in Orange County, there was no place other than nursing homes. So
if someone had a traumatic brain injury, no matter what their age, they would be put in a nursing home?
Yes, that is still what's going on. So I would make friends with other families, and they were saying, what's going to happen when I get too old to take care of my son, my daughter? And they knew that they were going to still be young, but maybe their health has taken a hit through all of this.
Right.
And eventually lifting and carrying, it's a relentless job. Their health usually doesn't hold up for the long term. And so I would keep talking about it to the board of Ryan's Reach and to my husband, saying, somebody's got to do something. And I thought if it was my son, that would not be acceptable.
Right.
So we decided that's something Ryan's Reach could pick up and take on that task. And my husband, sweet man that he is, he's a lawyer and a businessman, but he's mostly retired now. He became a group home administrator, got licensed, and he's figured out how we could open a home. So we have now Ryan's Reach R&R. It stands for Residence and Respite. And it's in Tustin. It's been open for over a year. We have 5 full-time residents. We still have a bed that we can take in respite care visitors.
Oh, that's lovely. I mean, but as you pointed out, it's very taxing on the family.
Yeah.
So the opportunity for a respite or a period of relief is just an amazing thing that you're giving people.
It's really important. A lot of people aren't ready to place their loved one full-time. They don't want to, but they haven't had a vacation in years, or to be able to just say, I want to go to my daughter's wedding and it's out of the state, or it's for whatever reason. So we want to make that available, and right now the families that have their loved ones in our home, they've written the most wonderful testimonials. They are so grateful that they can come and go as they want to, but they know that their loved one is being cared for. And they're among younger people. Our youngest is 22, our oldest is 49. 2 of them walk. The other 3 are either in wheelchairs or on a walker.
I see.
And our caregivers are able to care for all of them, but it's really a family feeling on a cul-de-sac in a lovely neighborhood. And so if I had to place Ryan in a home other than my own, this would feel really comfortable.
Yeah, and plus it's camaraderie for the people
Yes.
who are working together to sort of improve.
The ones at higher levels really encourage the other ones that are learning to talk again and learning to walk again. They give them encouragement. So it may be for a long time they live there, or maybe they'll advance out of our home, but we have a waiting list. We have a long waiting list, and we need to open more homes. So that's what Ryan's Reach is committed to right now. We continue our scholarships for therapy. We do a golf tournament every year, and we do a Dub-5K, 10K every year.
Oh, wow.
And if anybody wants to learn about it, they can go on ryansreach.com.
Or run in the...
Or they can come and participate in our events, for sure, but you can learn about the events on our website. And we just want to continue to see if we can get some more homes open.
And I think the bigger picture is just by suffering this terrible tragedy in your life, you've looked outside yourself and sort of made it into something positive that's affected a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And given not just the people who you help, but the people who get to give and participate in giving, which is done so much for your life.
It's true. I get to go in and say prayers with Ryan every night, and he verbalizes the most wonderful thoughts at night when he's sleepy. And one night I was thanking God for his life, and he said, "Yes, God, it's not a wasted life." I happened to be recording it at that time, and I just love that he recognizes, even though he's in bed and he's pretty dependent still on others to get him up and do things, it's not a wasted life. Because we're not human doings, we're human beings, and his very being is a blessing.
That's so true. And because of what had this not happened, all the people that have come into your life because of that wouldn't have happened either.
No.
So he's the center of all that as well.
Absolutely, and he is aware enough to know that there is a Ryan's Reach and that we're doing good for other people, and then that makes him very happy.
Oh, I'm sure. So, so in addition to your charitable work, I know you love to sing, and I know you've written a book. And can you tell us a little bit more about the book you've written?
Well, I took I just journaled, and I'm not a journaler, but in the first year and a half, I needed to just get my thoughts and emotions out. And so eventually when I found the time, I decided I would put it into book form, and this is Heaven Hears, my book. I got a co-author to help me with kind of getting the background for me, because I started my book right at Ryan's accident. And the publisher said people will want to know about your family. So there's some about me growing up a Boone, which is context for what happened in our home with Ryan. But for me, I wanted to share what we've been through, how it felt. I wanted to be as transparent as possible. So the good, the bad, the ugly. I try not to make myself look like some saint, because I certainly went through my down days and frustrations like everybody does. And if somebody's going through a brain injury or any kind of a catastrophic injury of a loved one, I hope that if they would read the book, that there'd be shared lessons that would help them.
Can you give 2 or 3 hints for someone who's suffering with that might make them, someone who's listening, that might make their life a little easier? Can you make some suggestions?
Well, let me think. That's a good question. The things that I felt like were spiritual lessons for me. And I think it can cross over no matter what faith you are. But one of the most important things I learned was to be very cognizant of what I said. I spoke life, and I spoke healing, and I tried to let my words manifest what I wanted to see happen. And so for a while, I just got rid of all the extra words of putting it into sentences, and I would just lay my hands on Ryan and I would speak voice and appetite, because I believe that we are made in the image of God, and God created with His Word and creates with His Word, and we are little imitators of God, and I believe He gave us creative power with our words. And so I still, to this day, I just lay my hands on Ryan and I speak life words. I speak healing words.
So affirmation, be positive.
Yeah.
That's one of the things.
And gratitude. In my journal, I just knew I needed to think on the things I had to be grateful for. And sometimes it was, thank you, God, that Ryan doesn't drool. I mean, it was simple like that.
Right.
Thank you, God, that when he fell, his roommate was with him.
Right.
I even thanked God that I was in Spain, because my mother was 5 minutes away and could race to the hospital, park herself there in the waiting room, and be this steady force of faith where I might have been a mess.
Right.
And I needed that 24 hours to come into
to process.
it. Yes, yes. So there were just indications all the way through that, as shocking as this was to me, it wasn't shocking to God. And that's why Heaven Hears is the title of my book. It's not because God just arrived on the scene when I prayed, but heaven heard the crash of the skylight. Heaven heard his labored breathing while I was sleeping in bed. You know, heaven didn't arrive on the scene just because I prayed, but certainly heaven heard my prayers. But God hears it all. He heard my cries. He heard my gratitude. So I just want people to know they're not alone. I'm getting teary, but they're not alone. There are people that have been through these things before you. Seek them out. Maybe read my book. But know that you're not alone. God is with you. My husband and I and my son could hold hands and be on the scene spiritually, even though I was halfway around the world. So I hope people look for their connection to the divine and develop that ahead of time. It's helpful to have kind of a foundation before you meet a catastrophe like that. And then when that happens, say, God, don't let this be for no reason. And He'll use it.
Well, it's been very inspiring learning how someone has taken such a great tragedy in their life and used it not just to help themselves and their family, but to help many, many people who suffer with traumatic brain injuries, and to have a positive outlook and to keep that positive outlook when struggling in their own family with the difficulty of recovery over a long period of time. And remember, all these challenges that you face, it's up to you how you face them.